But I could see someone being like, I don't want to spend this money, so I'm going to live under the delusion that she's going to pay me back for half in 4 years. And then in 4 years being like, that was fucking stupid of me. I'm just going to eat that and let's never think about it ever again because it makes me feel bad. So, but to actually think that it would stick around, like that would actually happen is true madness. She got her first job and now she wants to save up for a prom dress she really likes. Sister, I reminded her of our agreement about the pool, which she forgot about because that shit was like it was a lifetime ago for her. She no longer wants to uphold her end of the agreement. I insisted, threatening to take away her phone and car privileges if she doesn't pay back her father and I. Now she won't speak to me. My husband's agreeing with her, saying we can't have honestly expected a 12-year-old to keep her end of the agreement. For me, this isn't even about the money in many ways. It's about teaching my young daughter the right morals to live life with. I don't want her to think she can just go around making deals for her benefit and then just not upholding them. Am I the asshole? You're insane. It's not about the principle at all. It's about principles. People will be like, hey, Mrs. Principal, don't make a business deal with a 12-year-old. There's a reason that shit is like not legal. They don't know what they would sign over their life savings for like 2 Oreos. It's crazy. Obviously, you're the asshole. Like my daughter's spamming, I agree to all the terms of service. Yeah, every time she opens like a Pink Fong Baby Shark app, they're like, hey, read this whole form. My 2-year-old's like, boom, she can't even read a single word. What are they gonna do? They're gonna take her to court? She's gonna be like Goo Goo Gaga. Well, she can actually talk, but like she's not gonna respond to the proceedings too well. This is just crazy. Yes, she's insane. Not my daughter. She seems, well, I don't know how would I know. She's only 2. She acts a little crazy, but I think it's like, pretty par for the course for someone her age. She's so emotional though, dude. Oh my God. Can we just sit down and like talk about how you can't have 2 chocolate eggs for dinner? Why does everything have to be a temper tantrum? It's embarrassing. You're acting like a child. You can justify any stupidity by just saying it's about the principle. And it has no validity in this case. You know how many promises I make to my 2-year-old? You promise you're going to eat your dinner? Yeah. Okay, then we can play a little bit more. Catch her like 15 minutes later tossing the plate of grilled cheese across the damn room. Like you can't reason. I get that she's 12, but like you can't reason with children. The brains just don't work the same way that most adult brains work. And this shit was 4 years ago. You shouldn't, like, I think you can make a deal with like a 12-year-old that's like, I'll get you a puppy, but you have to walk it. And then like the next morning, they should be walking the dog. You can't even do this shit with most adults. Most adults are not signing deals. You ever heard of those like you buy like an ottoman at the brick and they're like, if you buy it today, you don't make payments until 2025. They go back on the payments like 20% of the time. They're defaulting like crazy. You can't sign something that's like, as a 30-year-old, it's difficult to sign something and then be like, yeah, 4 years from now, this is where my life's going to be at. This is where my head is going to be at. I'll figure it out. To expect like a 12-year-old to do it makes you the idiot. You got in a verbal agreement with a 12-year-old for thousands of dollars and are now trying to enforce it. Seriously, 4 years later, the right morals to live with are that 12-year-olds cannot legally enter contracts. Thank you guys. I'm new to Reddit and not on other socials. User received a Reddit comment for this post. Okay, hold on. OP's got some comments. Oh no, dude. Only 4 comments. This one was downvoted 5,000 times. I'm paying for her food, clothes, the house she lives in, the car, and everything else. I don't think she needs a cut of the real estate too. Like I said, this is about morals, not money logistics. Hey, you conceived her, shithead. Are you stupid? Oh, the baby I made is living in my house. Duh! Who could have predicted that one? This is gonna be one of the stupidest things I've ever read in my entire life. Actually, I pay for my 16-year-old's groceries. No kidding. She's made of, you grew her inside of your damn belly. Of course you could pay for her groceries. He different story if she was like, in her 40s or something like that, but like my sister in Christ, like you had the baby. You can't use it. Some motherfuckers will really like have a kid and then use it against the kid. Yeah, well, I made you.
On today's Angry Bulletin, in a bizarre turn of events, while the Pentagon was trying to debunk any notion that the government has been covering up any sort of reverse engineering UFO project over the last 60 years, at the same time, they quietly and without any sort of explanation revealed a great deal of information from the National Archives, much of it over 50 years old, and yet all of it involving objects that remain unidentified. What is the Pentagon trying to tell us? All of this and more coming at you on the Angry Astronaut right now. Good afternoon, and once again, welcome to a special alien edition of the Angry Astronaut. In the media, you may have noticed over the past week or so that the Pentagon released a report detailing their investigation of any sort of reverse engineering project or any sort of covert program that may have been taking place studying crashed alien ships, alien bodies, that sort of thing. And unsurprisingly, the report states that there's absolutely nothing to these rumors, and that is more of a circular pattern of rumors that have been roaming about Washington, the Pentagon, etc. Apparently rumors that have been shared amongst the same group of people, and as these rumors get circulated, they become more and more extraordinary. Now, of course, this is going to satisfy nobody. It will, of course, satisfy the people who thought that this was always a load of nonsense to begin with, and the people who think that the government is covering something up. Well, of course, a Pentagon investigation into all of this is going to be a cover-up. So, as I say, none of this is really going to satisfy much of anybody, and the Pentagon even admitted that. They said that for the foreseeable future, people are never going to accept any sort of explanation from the government, and people are always going to believe that there's some sort of covert reverse engineering program going on regarding extraterrestrial craft, and maybe someday we'll find out, but certainly not as a result of a government investigation. It'd have to be a whistleblower of some kind, somebody like David Grush, who has a lot more tangible evidence than he was able to present in front of Congress. All of that having been the case, though, interestingly enough, the Pentagon also, very quietly, released a lot of information from the National Archives regarding UFOs, regarding a Project Blue Book's investigation, regarding some testimony in terms of what the government actually thought about all of these strange incidents way back in the 1960s, or in some cases the 1950s, and they even included some footage. Now, when you see this footage, well, there's some photographs as well that at least some of them I have never seen before. It's going to be very easy to dismiss these things as being fakes of some kind, or in the case of one particular incident that involved a re-entering rocket, it'll be very easy to dismiss the objects that are seen in that film as, some sort of pieces of debris associated with the re-entry. However, what's important to point out is that there are all kinds of video records of re-entering rockets in the National Archives, dozens and dozens of them actually, and only this one. For some reason, the Pentagon only regarded this one as being significant enough to reproduce on their website and to also state that the objects that were seen in association with this re-entering rocket were indeed unidentified. And interestingly enough, there was another incident involving a re-entering rocket that also had some unidentified objects that were apparently monitoring the re-entry. It's kind of hard to say exactly what was happening, but it was eerily similar to what you're going to see in this footage. So very interesting stuff, and apparently it's only beginning. So what I'm going to show you now is some photographs, some footage that I certainly have never seen before that the Pentagon regards as being unidentified, and also some very interesting accounts, although they happened more than half a century ago. After all this time, still have not been adequately explained.
I'm here to discuss the so-called flying saucers. The Air Force interest in this problem has been due to our feeling of an obligation to identify and analyze to the best of our ability anything in the air that may have the possibility of threat or menace to the United States. In pursuit of this obligation, since 1947, we have received and analyzed between 1,000 and 2,000 reports that have come to us from all kinds of sources. Of this great mass of reports, we have been able adequately to explain the great bulk of them, explain them to our own satisfaction. We've been able to explain them as hoaxes, as erroneously identified friendly aircraft, as meteorological or electronic phenomena, or as light aberrations. However, there have been a certain percentage of this volume of reports that have been made by credible observers of relatively incredible things. It is this group of observations that we now are attempting to resolve. Our basic difficulty in dealing with these is that there is no measurement of them that makes it possible for us to put them in any pattern that would be profitable for a deliberate, custom sort of analysis to take the next step. We have, as of date, come to only one firm conclusion with respect to this remaining percentage, and that is that it does not contain any pattern of purpose or of consistency that we can relate with to any conceivable threat to the United States. We can say that the recent sightings are in no way connected with any secret development by any department of the United States. I'll start when you slow down. Major Keyhole, as author of the book Flying Saucers Are Real, what is your opinion of these new sightings of unidentified objects?
With all due respect to the Air Force, I believe that some of them will prove to be of interplanetary origin. During a 3-year investigation, I found that many pilots have described objects of substance and high speed. One case, pilots reported their plane was buffeted by an object which passed them at 500 miles an hour. Obviously, this was a solid object, and I believe it was from outer space.
And thus began the UFO controversy that has continued almost unchanged to this very day. The individual you're looking at right now, Donald Keyhoe, was an American Marine Corps naval aviator who wrote a book called The Flying Saucers Are Real. And after an extensive investigation of a wide variety of sightings, Mr. Keyhoe came to the same conclusions that UFO investigators have come to today, that whatever these objects are, have exhibited such unusual performance and abilities that seem completely beyond the capabilities of even experimental aircraft that the United States and other nations have produced in recent history, especially in 1950 when his book was released. And some of the photos that we've gotten from this time period are actually kind of remarkably clear given the technology that was available at the time, and this object, at least as far as I know, remains unexplained and just was dragged out of the National Archives and placed on Aero's website for some reason. And in association with all of this, I think it's also worth discussing just how worked up Congress was about all of this back in the 1960s, just as worked up as they are today. At the time, House Minority Leader Gerald R. Ford from Michigan said the following. Of course, this is the same Gerald R. Ford who would become president later on. He proposed that Congress investigate the rash of reported sightings of unidentified flying objects in southern Michigan and other parts of the country. Ford said that he believed a congressional inquiry would be worthwhile because the American people are becoming alarmed by UFO stories. Quote, in the light of these new sightings and incidents, Ford said, it would be a very wholesome thing for a committee of the Congress to conduct a number of hearings and to call responsible witnesses from the executive branch of the government and witnesses who say they have sighted these objects. I think the American people would feel better if there was a full-blown investigation of these incidents, which some persons allege have taken place. And although, predictably, no congressional investigation actually happened, the first public congressional hearing on the UFO phenomena took place on April 5th of 1966. And by the way, Ford was never satisfied with the official explanations from the U.S. Air Force at the time, who said that it could be dismissed infamously as swamp gas or lights created by the combustion of gases released by a swamp. By the way, the individual who produced that explanation was Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who changed his viewpoint radically a few years later and became a UFO investigator and a big believer in the extraterrestrial origin of UFOs. But the most interesting footage posted by the Pentagon recently is this particular footage taken by an aerial camera of an Atlas missile test. Now, on the surface, this doesn't seem to be that unusual of a film. The aerial camera captured the spectacular re-entry of an Atlas missile booster that was launched in September of 1962, together possibly with some of its payloads, although this is a bit unclear. This was the 100th Atlas rocket to be launched from this particular missile firing center off the coast of the Atlantic. The payload, which was just the nose cone of the rocket, weighted down with a dummy payload to simulate a warhead, slammed into the target area near Ascension Island off the west coast of Africa. The rocket also apparently carried 2 other cameras on its flight into space. They were attached to the missile at an angle to photograph the separation of the booster engines from the main sustainer engine about 2.5 minutes into the flight. The Air Force apparently needed the photographs for its continued study of problems that cropped up in the engine section in the past with this particular missile. Airplanes and ships were stationed downrange in an attempt to recover the cameras and their film, although it was never made 100% clear as to whether or not these particular cameras were actually recovered. If they burnt up, they most probably were not recovered, but if we are to assume that this booster is the main thing that's burning up on the film and then the payload is the secondary object, well, they seem to be following very much the same trajectory. And a little bit later on, you're going to see a third object appear that seems to be paralleling the course course, of the other objects. Now, once again, this shouldn't strike us as being all that unusual. Missile flights are always very spectacular, so it begs the question, of all the missile re-entries that have happened in the past, why would Arrow have included this particular clip on their website as being an unidentified object? Well, the explanation may be found in a story that was published in 1974, associated with a completely unrelated but similar missile test. By the way, this story came out in Huntsville, Alabama. Quote, experts at a missile base say that they are puzzled about strange ghost ships picked up by powerful radar scanners in the Pacific during a tracking exercise last year. There's been little official comment on what the scientists found. The major Dallas